So we're going to do an example now of matrix addition. So if you guys take a peek at page 509, the formulas are all there for matrix multiplication, matrix addition, and multiplication of a matrix by a scalar. However, let's just do some examples. And the book is going to stick to 2 by 2 examples, and we can do that. Let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, plus, just for an easy example, 1, 0, 2, minus 1. So in order to add these two matrices together, we just look the first entry, add those together, get a 2. And I do this for each of the entries. So I add the entries in the top left, I add the entries in the top right, I add the entries in the bottom left and on the bottom right, and that gives me my solution. Now, it's a little more complicated when we want to multiply two matrices. The formula is given in terms of a matrix in the form E, F, G, H, together with a matrix in the form A, B, C, D. But the basic idea is to get the entry here. What we're going to do is we're going to take the first row times the first column. Sorry about that. First row, first column. And that will give me the entry in the first row in the first column. Now if I take the first row and the second column, well, that'll give me the entry in the first row and the second column. If I take the second row and first column, that'll give me the entry in the second row and the first column. And if I take the second row and the second column, that'll give me the entry in the second row and the second column. Now, as you guys can see, each of these multiplications is going to be a row times a column. But exactly how are we going to take these rows times these columns? Well, let's do an example. Let's actually use the numbers that we had. 1, 0, 2, minus 1. Okay, so I want to take this row times this column to get the entry that's in the first row, first column. So what I'm going to do is I want to multiply the row 1, 3 by the column 1, 2. So I multiply the two ones, so I get 1 times 1, which is 1, and I get 3 times 2, which is 6. I add those numbers together, and that gives me a 7. Now, for the first row times the second column, I take 1 times 0, which is 0, plus 3 times minus 1, which is minus 3, and that gives me minus 3. Then for the entry in the second row, first column, I take the second row times the first column. That gives me 2 times 1, which is 2, plus 4 times 2, which is 8. So 2 plus 8 gives me 10. And then I take 2 times 0 plus 4 times minus 1, which is minus 4. And that is my solution. So just remember, for the entry in the 8th row and bth column, we take the 8th row times the bth column. And in order to do that, because our entries are going to have, our rows and columns are going to have 2 numbers each, we take the first numbers, multiply those, and add it to the product of the second 2 numbers. And using this technique, you should be able to solve some of the questions about Lie algebras and Jordan algebras.